What player on the Cowboys will make the first Pro Bowl of their career in 2022? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys. Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. I am Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. He is Landon McCool. Check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, it is the first day of OTAs for the Cowboys. Are you in the best shape of your life like everybody else?
I pulled a hammy getting out of bed this morning, so probably not.
The thing is, I am at the point of my life where I'm old and like if I sleep the wrong way, it just throws me off for the rest of the week. So I'm kind of washed.
I got a good workout in yesterday. I tried to get on the field, but they immediately tackled me and revoked my pass. So not quite in best shape of my life season for me.
That's right. We got lots of time before training camp. So
right.
The Cowboys are starting OTAs on Tuesday. It's not the media cannot be there. Media will be able to attend practice on Wednesday. So maybe we'll get some news and nuggets kind of leaking out of OTAs if that's the case. We will certainly talk about that. But today, as always, we're doing Twitter questions here on Tuesday. And Landon, let's start with this question that I really, really like. From at DC Draft, he wants to know, which player on the Cowboys will make the first Pro Bowl of their career in 2022?
Well, I like that question a lot. I'm going to say Dalton Schultz. I think that, he's had kind of a season of breakout, I guess you would call it 2 years ago. Last year, I think he had a very successful season. In fact, better than several of the guys who actually were named to the Pro Bowl last season. So I think the name is out there. He's gotten some exposure. Obviously, he plays for the Cowboys. Just kind of in Pro Bowl terms, This is definitely his window to make a Pro Bowl. I think is a name that is more well known. He's on the franchise tag. That'll get him some visibility as well. I think that Dalton Schultz is a name that people should kind of pencil in.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Now, he does have a little bit of an uphill battle with George Kittle and Kyle Pitts here in the NFC, but I think this is a good one because I think he's going to get a bunch of targets this year. And typically the way the Pro Bowl works is you kind of make the Pro Bowl 1 year after your breakout season, right?
Exactly,
right?
Yeah.
And he's had two pretty decent seasons, and if he has similar numbers or slightly better numbers than he had last year, I think he's going to get a lot of consideration. Plus, I mean, if the Cowboys are a good team this year, if they win 10, 11 games and he catches a bunch of passes, I think that's very realistic. I'm going to give you another. Go ahead, finish up.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, especially with Cooper gone, I think there's going to be more emphasis on him. So I just think that he'll get more exposure, and that usually means to more Pro Bowl votes.
I'm going to give you another one, and one that I actually think the Cowboys kind of need to have happen. For me, it's Tony Pollard. A running back, a backup running back, Landon, because we've been talking about this all offseason with Amari Cooper gone, with Cedric Wilson gone, with Michael Gallup likely to miss the first, let's say, month of the season, maybe the first 6 games. You've got to find a way to create big plays. And Tony Pollard, along with CeeDee Lamb, are the two most explosive players in this offense. There were just too many times last year where the Cowboys didn't get Pollard involved. And he still had 1,000 yards, despite having, I think it was 8 games last year with 10 or fewer touches. If he's somebody that all of a sudden is having, let's say, 1,400 yards from scrimmage, 1,500 yards from scrimmage, and he is helping the offense stay on balance, stay on track, and he's creating a bunch of explosive plays, I think that's a great sign for where the Cowboys as a team are headed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that if he's able to kind of put together that sort of hybrid wide receiver running back season that could really help kind of just add that extra element to the Cowboys offense that is there, but it's just they don't avail themselves of very much. I think that would be fantastic. I think we've talked about the trend of the Deebo Samuel being the kind of the hot new thing, and we've also talked about the fact that we think that Pollard is probably the closest thing the Cowboys have to a Deebo Samuel. So I think you see that sort of ability, and it would be great if the Cowboys really availed themselves of it. And if they did, I don't think it's unrealistic. People know Pollard's name because, again, he's probably one of the more well-known backup running backs in the league. So I think it's not outside of the realm of possibility if he has a big year that he can make it to a Pro Bowl.
And I just think there's ways the Cowboys can do this. For example, you mentioned Deebo Samuel, right? And I think that's a super high-end comp, right? Like, probably pretty unrealistic. Christian McCaffrey, probably unrealistic. Alvin Kamara, probably, again, unrealistic. But could he have an Aaron Jones type impact for the Cowboys, right? I'm looking at Aaron Jones's numbers the last 2 years. In 2020, 248 touches, 1,500 yards, and 11 touchdowns. In 2021, 223 touches, 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns. I think that kind of stuff is super realistic for Pollard, considering he had 1,000 yards last year on 160 touches. Like, just get him into that 220, 240 range. Have him have 1,300, 1,400 yards of offense and close to double-digit touchdowns. And we don't even need him to call him the workhorse back. And if that's the case, I think the Cowboys' offense will be fine.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think there's a lot of concern over what's going to happen with all those touches that Cooper's, abandoning or being left behind as he gets traded. I think that there's plenty of players to give those touches to. It's just about increasing the touch load on some of these players like Pollard. So I certainly don't think that's outside the realm of possibility to kind of up his touches that much.
Anybody else that we should mention here? Anybody on defense? I was trying to think on the offensive line. It seems pretty unlikely, unless like Terrence Steele takes a massive step forward. That seems pretty unlikely. I would assume, and it would have to be a defensive guy.
Yeah, maybe like one of the names that I came up with was Oso Odighizuwa. If he really had a breakout year this year, maybe he could. Same for Gallimore. I think both of those guys, we just don't really know what to expect from their play next year. We've seen good things at times, and they're both kind of on different tracks. Yeah, let's hear it.
What about Jaron Kearse? Kind of a similar thing from Dalton Schultz, right? He had the 1 year of really good production. If he can have another similar year, I thought his year last year was worthy of being in the Pro Bowl, right? So if he has a similar year this season, there's not a ton of great safeties in the NFC. Why not?
Well, that's the question, right? Is Kearse kind of will fall trap to that being sort of a hybrid defender. So where does he get, put in as a safety? Does he get put in as a linebacker? That may cause some issues, but I think, as far as where his play is, I think he's certainly deserving. I think, the Pro Bowl just does not do well with these kind of, non-position defined players. It's just not made for that. So sometimes guys like that can slip through the cracks, but I certainly think he's deserving.
Yeah, it's not hard to make to be a Pro Bowl safety. Antoine Winfield made it last year. I think Budda Baker was one of the safeties last year. Harrison Smith, who was pretty awful last year, he was the safety. So he's, of the guys that we mentioned, he probably has the best shot. We'll see. All right, let's take a quick break so we can tell you guys about Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your auto parts store to stock up on all the parts that you need. But Rock Auto has everything from engine control modules and brake parts, motor oil, and even new carpet. Whether it's for your classic or your daily driver, get everything you need in a few easy clicks delivered directly to your door. Best of all, prices at rockauto.com are always reliably low. So go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in the How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com today. All right, Landon, next question from Chris. He wants to know, do you think Dak has a legitimate shot of being an MVP candidate this season?
I mean, I think that if your team is playing well enough and you're a quarterback and you're of a certain ilk, then you have a shot. I think I don't know that it's, I mean, what are we talking about percentage wise? What's a shot? Like, 10%? Yeah. Or 5%? Sure. Like, I'm not like, I don't know that he's the betting favorite to be the MVP. And I think that you can also have an extremely good season, extremely a successful season and not be the MVP. So I think, again, like a lot of this stuff, MVP, Pro Bowls, there's a lot of politics in it. There's a lot of kind of, exposure to the national, media and to the national fandom. The Cowboys obviously have that in spades, but there's a lot more to do with it than just like true success on the field necessarily. So it's kind of hard to kind of gamble and kind of take the shot here. I would say that he has about as good a chance as most quarterbacks not named Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady.
All right, so let's just run through it really quickly. Here's his odds via Bet Online. Dak is currently at 20-1. Other players with similar odds: Kyler Murray at 18-1, Matt Stafford at 18-1, Lamar Jackson at 20-1, Derek Carr at 33-1, Derrick Henry at 33-1, Jonathan Taylor at 33-1. How do you like those odds?
I mean, those are good. It's a preseason. It's preseason. It's tough to kind of really guesstimate this at this point. But again, any starting quarterback that's on a team that's decent, I think has some shot to make the MVP, but probably, order of magnitude less than, like I said, those guys that I mentioned previously, like Rodgers, Mahomes, and Brady. And Herbert. I would imagine Herbert would be a guy that
I do want people to remember, before Dak hurt his calf last year, he was in the conversation. His first 6 games of the season, 16 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, passer rating of 115. Like, he was on pace to throw 45 touchdowns that season. I mean, I don't know if he's going to be able to do that this year, but could he, if he gets to 42 touchdowns and let's say 5,000 passing yards, which is pretty realistic, yeah, why not? And if the Cowboys are a number 1 seed, a 2 seed, I could certainly see it.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just about like you might as well be asking us like, how successful are the Cowboys going to be this season? It's like, well, there's certainly a point on that spectrum of possibilities that the Cowboys are good enough that Dak is in the conversation for an MVP season. It was happening at certain points of the season last year.
Next question. This is a really good one from Goran. He wants to know, if you had to pay one right now, because we are entering year 3 for both of these players, who would you feel more comfortable giving a long-term deal to? CeeDee Lamb or Trevon Diggs?
I think CeeDee Lamb. I mean, for me, it's. I think with the defensive backs, like,
it's cheaper to sign a defensive back. That much for sure.
I know, but I also think you can just roll them in and out to a large degree. It feels like, in ways, it's much like, I mean, the truth is that that's the same thing for the wide receivers as well. But I don't know. I think if you're making me choose between the two, I'm probably choosing CeeDee Lamb. I kind of feel like we can go and get cornerbacks even easier than we can wide receivers in the draft. But I think it's close, honestly.
Again, we're not taking away anything from either player here. The problem is cornerback production is just not as stable as wide receiver production, right? And I think even the case with like Diggs, who is very reliant on creating takeaways, which is fantastic. I'm of the one that I care more about takeaways than the yardage given up, because I think that stuff could be really noisy. But if you, let's say Diggs all of a sudden goes from 11 interceptions to 5 interceptions, which is still be really good. Like, most corners would love to have 5 interceptions in a season. It's a pretty big drop off. And all of a sudden his value just isn't there compared to CeeDee Lamb. I should also mention, since CeeDee was drafted and he's been playing with a bunch of other good receivers and 5 different starting quarterbacks, he has the second most big plays in the NFL, behind only Justin Jefferson. The second most. That's pretty hard to replace. So I love both these guys. I feel like Dallas will probably be able to sign both of them, but I would go with CeeDee, I think, here.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is, for as much complaining as we're doing about them not signing free agents, you may not need to make this choice in the next 2 years. So that's the positive, is because of this. They're trying to save that money to sign both of these guys. So we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Next question from @Cliff Tebow. He wants to know, if Kelvin Joseph, situation gets cleared, do you think he has a chance to start opposite of Trevon Diggs this year?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the game plan, that if he continues to develop and get better, that he's going to take that starting job opposite of Diggs, and hopefully you kick Brown inside, and now you've got a really nice trio of corners.
Yep.
So that certainly is the plan. I don't know if, again, we don't know anything about what's going on with this situation off the field or what the status of it is. Right? It's been very quiet since the whole thing got reported, and then it was reported that there's been an arrest made, but that doesn't mean it's over. So I think we'll obviously know more as training camp goes on and as we hear more from the NFL. But there, putting that aside for a second, it sounds like Joseph has been very engaged in the offseason. Mm-hmm. He's been a big part of the offseason workouts. He's a very talented player. So if he comes in and kind of lives up to the hype and lives up to what his offseason efforts have been, there's no reason that he couldn't come in and take that CB2 job from Brown and then, kind of just knock everyone down one peg and make this cornerback group even better than it was last year.
And that's probably what the Cowboys are hoping for, right? I think if it's close, they're going to play Kelvin Joseph because I think they have a specific role that they can use Jordan Lewis in if they need to, right? If Anthony Brown comes and plays a slot, they can use Jordan Lewis to play a bunch of stuff. But I honestly think they're just going to rotate a lot of these guys. Like outside of Diggs, you're going to see a lot of rotation because we saw it even last year, right? Even when Anthony Brown was healthy, they were finding ways to get Nahshon Wright on the field for, what did we say, a couple hundred snaps on defense, right? They were playing Jordan Lewis. They were playing Maurice Kennedy some. I think starter is a little bit overblown because I don't know. They're going to figure out a way to find their best defensive backs and get them on the field when it matters the most.
Yeah, absolutely. When you've got depth, when you've got numbers there, why not? There's not a huge drop off between your CB2 and CB4. So let's keep them fresh and rotate them in series and have packages where you bring Lewis out in the field and take advantage of his skills. All that. Let's throw that all in there and take advantage of the fact that you have some depth at the position.
And there might even be packages where Jordan Lewis is playing like a safety spot, right? Where he's coming down and covering a running back, or we'll see. If Kelvin Joseph doesn't pan out, or if something else happens that prohibits him from being on the field, they'll be fine either way because they have depth. But if he's really good, I mean, the Cowboys defense, the ceiling is just that much higher because then now you have two highly, highly athletic, long cornerbacks on the outside that can both take the ball away. It's all upside here. I'm excited to see how it plays out in camp.
We talk about defensive regression all the time. And because it's hard to maintain a high level of play on defense. That is often because teams have success on their defense and then try to just, as they say, roll it back. Let's run it back, right? And just use the same group over the same period of time and hope for the same results. The difference here with the Cowboys that gives us hope that the regression may not be as hard or as bad is that they're not sitting on their laurels. They're getting younger and better. They have more corners that are coming in. They've got, Randy Gregory. Losing Randy Gregory isn't great, but you've got new younger blood that could potentially improve the situation. Maybe not immediately. Maybe there's growing pains early. Sure. But that's how you fight regression, is that you don't rest on your laurels. You continue to try to inject talent onto your defense and not assume that the results that you got last year are going to be the results that you get this year.
Yeah, and we'll see. If the Cowboys can have 2, 3, 4 players, step up and take, just improve, I think the defense could be maybe even better than it was last year because there were weeks where they got a bunch of turnovers, and then there were other weeks where if they didn't get a turnover, the defense might struggle a little bit to get stops. We'll see. Should be a lot of fun to watch this defense, though, progress as the season goes along. But let's take one more quick break to tell you guys about Built Bar and Brownie Batter Puffs. I love brownies, but you know what I love more? Brownie batter. We talked about this before in the podcast, but my wife still lets me lick the spoon after she makes brownies for like birthdays or whatever. If you like brownie batter as much as I do, you are in luck because Built has a new creation, and this one is better than ever, the Brownie Batter Puff. Yes, you heard me right. This puff is a protein bar that has 140 calories, 17 grams of protein, but only 7 grams of sugar. Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, and the Brownie Batter Puffs will have you completely forgetting that you are eating a protein bar. Go to Built.com and use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your order. Go right now before they run out because they're not going to last very long. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, next question. This one is a really good one from Evan. He wants to know, what does Tyron Smith's future look like to you? The Cowboys have already kind of talked about the selection of Tyler Smith to eventually replace Tyron Smith. How much longer do you think he's going to be with the Cowboys?
I think it's hard to say. I mean, he's got 2 years left on that deal, or
he's got 2 years left of his deal and then a void year in 2024.
So I think this is a really pivotal year for Smith because, he missed some time last year with the ankle situation. It wasn't the back. It wasn't it didn't have anything to do with the neck or the back situation. That's been kind of the long-term struggle with his career. So I'm interested to see exactly what we get from him this year. Is he, we've heard whispers that he may be thinking about kind of ending it sooner than later. But I would be interested to see exactly
his career. By the way, I should mention that his career, not anything else for you guys that are morbid out there.
Oh no, he's ending it all. He's gonna at the end of the season, he's just driving his car off into the ocean. No, I think he's ending, potentially, calling it a career. I mean, even though he's only 32 years old, maybe he's been playing for 10 plus seasons. I mean, since he was a 20-year-old. So I think that it'll be interesting to see exactly how his body gets through this year, because last year the time that he missed was because he rolled an ankle. It was an ankle sprain, and that was really the issue. Now that he's had a full off season without his neck back situation, how does that make him feel going into the season? How does he feel going throughout the season? Maybe it's even more kind of rejuvenating this year, being another year away from that kind of neck and back surgery. So I think this is a big year to find out exactly how long his career. To answer your question, would I be shocked if he retired at the end of the season?
No,
absolutely not. Would I be surprised if he got through the whole year, only missed a couple of games with trivial injuries, and decided that he's going to roll out for the rest of his contract? I wouldn't be surprised by that either.
Yeah, I agree. I think 2 years is probably the max. I kind of don't see him signing another contract extension. Probably it feels like it's 2 years at the most. But we'll see. Maybe if he gets through the season healthy and he's feeling really good and the neck's not giving him any problems, I wouldn't be shocked to see him sign a 1 year extension and maybe lower the cap number a little bit for the Cowboys and kind of play it year by year. Very similar to what the Rams did with Andrew Whitworth, right? It's just let's not make any decisions about after this year. Let's just wait to see how your body feels, and we'll kind of revisit it every May or June. That's probably the way the Cowboys should go about this.
Yeah, I agree.
Because they're not going to replace him very easy. I know he's been banged up, but he's still really, really good when he's healthy. So just keep him as long as you can. All right, next question. And again, really good questions today. This one from @Jones's Babysitter, who is a diehard listener of the show. He wants to know, are there any veterans that could be traded away if young players perform well in training camp and OTAs? I came up with a list. A couple of these guys we actually talked about yesterday. Terrell Basham, maybe. Carlos Watkins, maybe. Although I don't think either of those guys would get a lot on the trade market.
Probably not what you would be worth the trade, right? You could trade, get a conditional 7th, but is that worth more than having the insurance policy of having Terrell Basham as your 5th pass rusher? I don't think it is.
What about, we mentioned this guy at the top, Jordan Lewis. What if what if Calvin Joseph looks really good in camp and you feel good about Bland and you feel good about Nahshon Wright, and it's all of a sudden, hey, this team is willing to give you a conditional 5th round pick that turns into a 4th round pick based on snaps. He's got a cap hit of $4 million this year. I could see that if a team has an injury in the secondary.
Yeah, corner seems to me to be the position that to look at, right? Just exactly the scenario you just mentioned. Joseph has a good training camp. You feel positive about his legal situation, his off-field situation. You see a more improvement from Nahshon Wright, and then suddenly you've just got more corners than you frankly can even get on the field. And there is obviously, like we talked about, there's no such thing as having too many good corners, but there is also something to the idea of getting a draft pick and also some cap relief for a guy that suddenly may not Jordan Lewis for $4 million when you need him to play, like because you don't have Joseph for some reason, or Joseph isn't as good as you need him to be, or Wright isn't as good as you need to be. That makes a lot of sense. $4 million for Jordan Lewis when you've got a Nahshon Wright who's on the rise, Joseph who's on the field, you don't need to worry about. It doesn't make as much financial sense. So making a trade where you get draft picks and cap relief, that does make a lot of sense if you have a scenario where your young players are on the rise.
And he is one of the few players that I could see a team like Chargers, for example. They're in a playoff window or a championship window right now. Asante Samuel Jr. goes down for the season.
Yeah.
Let's hope that doesn't happen. And hey, we can flip a 4th-round pick for a 27-year-old corner with a bunch of experience. Done. Sign us up. Or a 5th-round pick that becomes X and X. Like that kind of stuff I can see happening. The only other player that I see as a possibility is like Tyler Biotish, maybe. Like if a team has an injury at center and the Cowboys just like Alex Lindstrom more, right? Or maybe Matt Farniak just beats him out in camp and all of a sudden, hey, the Baltimore Ravens need a center or the New York Jets need a center. This is a guy that's still on a rookie deal, 2 years left of control. Here's a 5th-round pick for Tyler Biotish. I could see something like that.
Yeah. Or someone trading for Cooper Rush to be the starting quarterback. I'm just kidding. I do think, I think the spots that we mentioned are the ones, right? Like because I think the Jordan Lewis is going to likely be a better option in season than whatever cornerback you're likely to find on the street, and I think he'd be significantly better to the point where a conditional draft pick would be worth it, especially if you're in, like you mentioned, a championship window, a win now window.
And we've seen teams like the Rams. They'll do this all the time. They'll rent a guy for a day 3 pick. Hey, they rented a guy for a 2nd-round pick last year for 8 games, and it ultimately ended up being worth it. So Jordan Lewis is not Von Miller, but the prices aren't going to be all that similar either. So it wouldn't shock me if we see something like that. All right, last question. Do you see, this one from Sean, do you see any players that could have a position switch this year? For example, Tyler Coyle to linebacker like we saw last year, maybe Isaac Taylor-Stewart, the USC corner to safety. Anybody that you could see making a position switch this year for the Cowboys?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of guys who I think that are flexible guys that, may see more snaps at another position than what they're currently listed as. Like we talked about the potential for Marquise Ball, right? He's an undrafted free agent that came in. It sounds like the Cowboys.
Marquise Bell, right?
Bell. I always say Ball. There was a contingency of linebacker coaches that went out to go work him out because Quinn saw his tape and thought that he could potentially be, like a nickel linebacker. So watch for that. We mentioned Ryan Nall yesterday. Mm-hmm. He's a running back by trade, but I mean, he's a bigger guy. He's taken some fullback snaps. Look for him to potentially play some fullback there. I wouldn't be surprised to see, this isn't really a position switch, but I wouldn't be surprised to see someone like Ferguson taking snaps in the backfield as a fullback.
An H-back, whatever.
An H-back. They kind of do that. Obviously, some of the guys like Curse, they fall into this category a little bit because
it's just so hard when you have a team that's as multiple as the Cowboys are, like with Dan Quinn, right? Because these guys they play so many different positions, and we're just kind of used to it by now, right? Now, if we're talking like Rod Marinelli time in Dallas when everybody had a clear-cut position, that we probably would have more to talk about. But Kurtz could be a free safety on one play and could be blitzing off the edge in the next play. Like it's just
like Parsons. It's positionless football is a thing now, guys. Yeah. So and it's just like these kind of, and this is not picking on anyone, but it's these kind of antiquated questions about starters and position flex. It's like it's kind of the wrong framing of how they look at the situation now. They like to get a collection of players who can do an assortment of different tasks that are good at assortment of different things, and then use those skills, leverage those skills by different formations and personnel groupings getting deployed on the field, and then trying to accomplish it like a common goal.
Now, somebody did ask, like actually using Connor McGovern as like a full-time fullback, like actually just having him focus on that position. It's probably not what they're going to do because I still think he's a better right guard than left guard, but maybe we just see more of it in training camp, right? Like they actually lean into it more.
The dream died when the Mercer kid got picked, and
Jason Poe.
Jason Poe. That was our true guard to fullback convert that we have been hoping for, but unfortunately that didn't pass. You know, again,
but you know what would be funny though? If McGovern, like let's say Farniak looks excellent in camp, right? And he wins the swing interior job, which he might even have a leg up on it now because he's got the ability to play center. But and all of a sudden, like you're just not thinking of McGovern as a actual guard option. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, if he's still on the roster, you probably don't want to get rid of him because I mean he's a 3rd-round pick, and it's you'll incur dead money just by cutting him.
Right?
So, and he's played, so you don't really get rid of guys that have the starting experience as an interior offensive lineman, even if he isn't necessarily your first guy off the bench now. Correct. So why not get some use out of him, right? You'll use him on special teams for sure. He's already shown to be a good fullback. Why not use him there just to kind of, again, squeezing all the juice out of that, just to make sure you're getting all your value out of these guys.
All right, that is it for today's show. Thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen of the day. Now make your second listen. The Locked On NFL podcast, our national NFL experts and insiders keep fans dialed in with the biggest stories and the latest news from around the league, because an offseason doesn't equal a break in the action. Follow Locked On NFL every day on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on all the same places. You guys know by now where to listen to Locked On Cowboys podcast. YouTube, you guys have been awesome over there. Check us out there. Follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Cowboys. You can follow Landon at McCool BCB. I am at Marcus_Mosher. We'll see you guys next time.